Hi, and welcome to Global Gist with BJ. How are you doing? So, in continuation to our series, right, that we've been talking about, I want to talk about the return of the glory, right, of the black glory. I mean, the return of the black people's glory. Now, let's begin. They stripped our crowns, they burned our names from the books, they told the world we came from nothing. But you can't erase what God has ordained. The glory they buried is returning, and the people they called slaves are walking like kings again. This is the return of black glory. Now, for too long, we've been made to believe our greatness began in chains, but our story began in kingdoms. Before slavery, there was strength. Before oppression, there was brilliance. We built empires, universities, cities, and civilizations long before we were ever called minorities. They rewrote our history to make us forget where we come from, but heaven never forgot. Now, the world is starting to see glimpses of that ancient glory returning in our arts, our music, our innovations, our leadership. We are not becoming something new. We are returning to what we've always been. Every moment, every protest, every creation is more than resistance. It's remembrance. Black America, your glory didn't die in the fields. It was hidden for a season, but prophecy says everything that was lost shall be restored, and the last shall be first. The crown that was stolen is being placed back on our heads, not by men, but by the hand of God Himself. And that is why, like the just No King's Day protest that was just concluded, people kept asking, why are Black Americans not there? Why are they not there? What happened? We finally recognized ourselves, right? We knew that we were being used all along, and we are resting. Anyways, just watch these videos. I'll be back. Do not forget credits to the real creators of those videos. I'll be back with the closing. Please make sure you subscribe. Make sure you watch the videos to the end. I'll be back. Please stay with me. Clock it.
So I've recently started toying around with the idea of politically identifying as a celebrationist, and it surfaced a lot of thoughts for me about why I think white leftists, white activists, obviously accelerationists are another bag of cats, don't really integrate into liberation and movement work very well. I find that a lot of white leftists take a really academic approach to their personal politics and politics in general. And one of the ways I see that is by essentially removing a lot of radical Black movements from spiritual contexts, essentially rationalizing Black movement building and liberation work. I think the Haitian Revolution is like a really great example of this, right? Like when we talk about the Haitian Revolution, we often talk about it as one of the first labor strikes, right? Really in history, or one of the earliest ones. And we don't often talk about the fact that the entire revolution itself was grounded in voodoo, in traditional practices, and was catalyzed in ritual. In the same way that people are really reticent and hesitant to talk about MLK and his movement as a Christian movement, right? And that's not to say we're pigeonholing here. That's not to say that there isn't overlap in those Venn diagrams. But I find there to be something really funny about how white leftists specifically want to remove the concept of anything that isn't academic, that isn't logical and rational from these conversations, right? To separate the spiritualism or the religious components from activism, from liberation work in general. And fundamentally from political identity, right? Often identifying politically with any sort of spiritualism, with any sort of spiritual practice, undermines your legitimacy in a lot of white leftist spaces. And as a Black activist myself, and as a liberation worker, I have been a frontline activist for 10 years of my life, and I've worked in a myriad of different roles and capacities over the course of the last 15 years. I think this is where a lot of the distrust comes from, where even white leftists can be seen as accelerationists because there isn't a clear path in terms of understanding their ideology as it is pro-life. And I don't mean pro-life in the sense of reproductive rights. I mean supporting joy, in service of joy, liberation, safety, and human beings, right? Our right to thrive, our right to safety, our right to joy and abundance. Something I think about a lot is the ancestral components of liberation, right? Getting ourselves free and the ways that we can decolonize and do belief system deconstruction in order to serve ancestral purpose. And the fact of the matter is, and I have to remind myself of this often, the majority of the reason our bloodline survived wasn't because people managed to be wickedly smart or wickedly warlike. It was hair braiding and love making and ass shaking and joy seeking and cooking that made a world that was worth occupying during some of the most horrific events in history, and that was also worth fighting for, as in coming out the other side and being willing to rebuild in the image that we all know that we deserve. Right, operating in personal politics and in politics in general with the assumption and the understanding that everyone has the right to live. I don't want this to just come off as some like flat critique of white leftists or go into that sort of beat to death argument that white people lack culture or lack soul or rhythm. But I do want to invite people into like a fuller way of imagining politics and liberation. Because honestly, it's quite unsettling the way this sort of clinicalized, spirituality stripped form of leftism often operates or ends up in these other extremes, right? With this sense of bloodlust, with this excitement, this foaming at the mouth for violent revolution without regard for who ultimately pays the deepest, hardest cost of that, which is already the most vulnerable people on this planet, even if it is in service of long-term liberation. And there's more tools than just being right or servicing pat on the backtivism and making sure that you are impossible to critique or that you are able to move through the correct circles to be able to make decisions or have the social capital that you want, right? We often, when we think about revolution, think about the end or we think about the glory, but it's a lot of time occupying really undesirable circumstances, material, emotional, and beyond, economic. Movements aren't just theories, right? They're ritual, they're prayer, they're songs, they're dreams. And I think one of the hardest things about this, especially as it comes to digital activists or people that have a large platform, is that people tend to attach onto ideologues or pedestaled people without really thinking about whether their ideology or their analysis actually serves community, actually serves liberation, right? A question that I ask myself a lot is, does this make me feel smart or does this make me feel motivated in the direction of mutuality, of care, of better understanding and serving the world that I want to see, the world that I want to occupy, the world that I want to be real? I'm seeing in so many different directions over the past couple months, people have had a really hard time recognizing community versus adversary, right? Whether it's the Madeline Pendleton of it all, what happened with Drew Afualo and an old clip surfacing, or even what happened with Jasmine, right? I think people go to spaces and feel validated and feel smart and feel like they have the resource and the tool to sharpen the ideas that they already have, right? To reinforce the ideologies that they already have, and don't necessarily critique whether or not when they leave that space, when they leave that creator, when they walk away with that reinforcement, whether that makes them a better asset to community or whether they're actually performing another type of more insidious individualism. And whether, frankly, their political ideology exists to create a hierarchy that allows them to dunk on other people. I'm not in any way saying that theory isn't important or that there isn't an incredible amount of value in having an academic understanding of the history of movement, of liberation, and of revolution. But I am saying there's a pause that needs to happen in the way that we cherry pick and tend to over-rationalize, clinicize, sterilize, and strip some of the more fundamental human-centered components from this work and from how we develop our core belief systems around it in general.
I genuinely believe that slavery was a contract that white people needed to fulfill. A contract with some deity, I don't know, but this contract required black bodies. And that is exactly what it got. And those black bodies were provided in exchange for riches and privilege. It was a 400 plus year contract that is running out. And so what needs to happen now? They need to take the country back to where it was before, to renew that contract. This country is genuinely sinister. And if you don't see it now, you never will. Now, I don't know the terms of the contract, but somewhere in that contract, there is a clause about black and brown bodies. And don't come in here getting all serious. This is just me trying to make sense of the world. No, but there is a contract. There is a contract. The contract was fulfilled when they brought black bodies to this country. The contract was fulfilled when they participated in the violent removal of Native Americans. The contract was fulfilled when they committed acts of violence against the enslaved and against black and brown people in this country. And the contract is running out, and they're panicking, and they need to take us back. The defunding of PBS to replace with PragerU, the dismantling of museums and historical artifacts, the banning of books, and the deletion of historical documents. Put down your Bibles and pick up a spell book. Because somewhere in that contract, I'm sure of it, included the removal of spiritual practices and replacing them with the Bible. The Bible is what's anchoring us to our own demise.
The reason I couldn't be racist or sexist or any other form of prejudice is because I want you to know I dislike you for you. You know, and prejudice would just confuse my very merit-based system of hating. You know, because people think the solution to racism, sexism, homophobia is like more love. I actually think it's more thoughtful hate. Because any old nobody could dislike me because of the melanin in my skin. That's a chemical. That's rookie stuff. I dislike souls, the essence of who you are as a being. Bro, like, you don't like women, your Y is the Y chromosome. That's nothing. Dude, I tabulate an amalgamation of all your decision making your whole life, and that's what I dislike. You can't replace a chromosome or change a chemical in your body. That's you. You know? I keep a list like the old college football BCS rankings of people I dislike. It's like Andrew Jackson, King Leopold II, Bo Burnham. Just
my brothers and sisters in Christ are not gonna like what I have to say, but I'm gonna say it. And before I say it, I just know that I love everybody. I feel like you should love everybody. You know, test the fruits of somebody's spirits before you judge them or decide you want to hang around them or whatnot. And I do acknowledge that everything is a spiritual battle, not a physical one. But with that being said, we need to start holding these white Christians and non-black Christians accountable for their microaggression, for their passive aggressiveness, for their cultural appropriation, and for their racism, point blank, period. All that I just said is demonic. And that right there is a spiritual battle alone. But just because someone is operating under a racist spirit, just because someone is passive aggressive, just because someone's a Christian and they're doing stuff like that doesn't mean they're a baby and they don't understand what they're doing is wrong. Y'all make it seem like, oh, well, they're racist. They're a racist white person. Oh, well, you know, it's a spiritual battle. And, you know, like, don't sit up there and make it seem like they don't know. Like, oh, they're possessed. They're possessed under a racist spirit, and they just don't know. They're babies. They don't understand what they're doing is wrong. They just don't know. So have mercy and have grace. I'm so sick and tired of that. I'm so sick and tired of seeing black Christians in general defending and giving passes to these white Christians who appropriate black culture, especially specifically black American culture. I'm talking about appropriate the heck out of it. Trying to call themselves having a black sin, knowing good and well, like, I can't. And they'll be sitting up there trying to defend it. And we're all brothers and sisters in Christ. We are. You are 110% right. We are. That does not mean that you excuse their ignorant and racist behavior. And when you do stuff like that, what you're basically telling black people from all over, African American, African, Caribbean, whatever, what you're basically telling black people is that your culture is not important. You as a black person is not important. Get over it. We're all brothers and sisters in Christ. It don't matter. That's darn near what you're saying. I'm not saying, like, you know, again, the church should not be divided based off of race. If we come together in Christ, we should all come together in Christ in love and peace and in harmony. But we are not in heaven yet. We are still on earth. And there is still a lot of BS that we have to deal with on this earth because of the color of our skin, because of ignorant people out there who would lynch us if they got the chance to do it without any consequences. That's what we have to live through. And just because they're a Christian just like we are does not mean that they know our experience. That does not mean that we give them sympathy points. That does not mean we let them slide on the backhanded comments and microaggression and passive aggressiveness behavior towards us. That does not mean that. That's not what that means. People make it seem like that white racist Christians cannot exist. And I'm not even talking about the hillbilly country Christians that are obviously racist. I'm talking about the ones that be in the modern day churches. White women who fetishize black men and have secret jealousy and animosity towards black women can be Christian women and be in the church and be all up in your face and talk about hallelujah and bless you. Cause she's sitting over her dating the black drummer over there. You peep the type of time she's on. You peep. She's the type of white woman that fetishizes black men, that has secret animosity and jealousy towards black women. And when you say something about it, oh, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. It's just love. God brought them together. It's just like, let's stop pretending. Like, can we stop pretending? Again, I'm not talking about the, hillbilly country white people that's a Christian, because, we can already tell, like, oh, yeah. I'm talking about the ones that be in these modern day churches, Maverick City type churches. I know I've been talking for a while, y'all, my bad. But I just had to get that out because people, like, I'm sorry, especially black Christians, they let too much slide. They let white people slide too much with the stuff that they do, with appropriation, with the microaggression, with the racism, and they try to sit up there and act like that these people are incompetent. They don't know what they're doing, and this is just such a spiritual battle. And it is a spiritual battle, but that does not mean that they lack competence. They're not incompetent of what they're doing. They know what they're doing. The word tells us to righteously judge. You can get somebody in check without cussing them out, putting your hands on them, or cursing them. They know what they're doing is wrong. They know where their hearts lay. Let's stop excusing it.
I need someone to explain to me what's so hard about understanding that Black Americans have over 400 years of history and culture. What is so difficult in conceptualizing that? We was literally the backbone of and built a new country by force. Like, America would not be what it was and what it is today without Black Americans. 400 years of history, of culture, of families, of generations. What makes you think we're lost at all and don't have any connection to any roots? Right? And let's not talk about lineages to Africa for a second, because we could talk about that all day long. We could never know where our people were from in Africa, and we would still have roots. I don't know why that's so difficult to conceptualize. And actually, you know what? There's always so much talk about Black Americans needing to be proud and have pride in our origins in Africa. And I agree with y'all. I've been to the continent, one country, Senegal, and I felt so much pride and connection there. And I agree so much. I have so much connection that the rest of y'all should have pride in Black Americans too. Where's your pride in Black Americans as not being Black Americans? Our ancestors was your ancestors' cousins. They were family, baby, and they brought and cultivated an entire culture while surviving bondage, a thriving culture, mind you. A culture that we love, talking about having a lot of origins in Africa. Okay, so if we're so connected, right? Have pride in the culture that we built here. Have pride in the culture that literally is the backbone of an entire country. Not just America, but the entire Western Hemisphere, due to forced labor. They still brought culture that thrived in North America, and the Caribbean, and Latin America, and South America. Have pride in us the same way that we should have pride in our origins elsewhere, okay? We're not lost. We have roots. We have culture. We have history.
When you say to me African culture, I always say there are three types. Pre-colonial, the one that developed during colonialism because of permeations from religion, and the post-colonial, which really was a cementation of the so-called Pan-African movement, which we have not talked about here, which itself was a reaction to colonialism. Because if you do that, you will begin to ask, what was Africa before Africa was Africa? Pan-Africanism even does not ask that, because Pan-Africanism, rightly so, was a reaction to colonialism.
According to bell hooks, in order to decolonize our minds, we must surrender participation in whatever sphere of coercive hierarchical domination that we enjoy as individuals as well as a group. And as someone who's lived across the diaspora, this resonates very deeply because on one hand, I genuinely believe that Black people across the diaspora are keenly aware of the dominant white supremacist hierarchies that govern our reality. But at the same time, we let those dominant white supremacist ideologies pit us against each other. In the United States, for example, there's this notion of a good Black, and that is imposed upon ourselves by ourselves. People that are lighter skinned are considered more attractive and just more high value, whereas people that are considered ghetto or stereotypically Black American are considered low value, and in fact, we're taught to be embarrassed of them. In my home country of Nigeria, perception of privilege comes from your proximity to those dominant Western cultures that destroyed your nation. If you have a British accent, if you have an American accent, then you are seen as better than everybody else. And those people are given license to look down on their own people. But at the end of the day, in a dominant white supremacist world, we are all Black. And in fact, according to Bell Hook, the only way that Black people can be truly liberated is to completely remove ourselves from those hierarchies that have absolutely nothing to do with us and definitely did not have us in mind. And rather, this hyper focus of where we fit into the hierarchy in tandem to other Black people is a continuation of this mental and psychological manipulation that has been used against us since the beginning of Black enslavement and disenfranchisement. If you look back to the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade, there were rich Black people. There were rich Black people that owned slaves, but they considered themselves completely different from those Black people because in their minds, they were better than them. In the US, you also see this demarcation with this notion of someone that was a house slave or a slave outside, as if they were not all slaves. And if you look at the civil rights movement in the United States and why it was so powerful and why MLK's message was so powerful is because he preached Black self-love. He understood that before we could fully liberate ourselves, we had to learn to love ourselves again and understand what was taken away from us and how we have been made to hate ourselves and how in a lot of ways, Black enslavement was mostly possible not because of just physical enslavement, but because of psychological and emotional enslavement, where we put ourselves at the bottom of the totem pole, and then we are now trying to find ourselves in this hierarchy that literally does not have us in mind. And according to Bell Hook, true liberation comes from the ethic of love for yourself and love for every single human being. The only way marginalized and disenfranchised people can be truly liberated is to learn to just unconditional love for themselves and for their people. And until we have that love, that unity, that cohesion, where we don't see ourselves as better than other Black people because of maybe some proximity to whiteness, or we find ourselves put in the hierarchy of whiteness, so we feel we've arrived, we're not like those other Black people. Until we can clear our minds and our souls from that BS, we will never be free. Because at this point, we do it to ourselves. Frantz Fanon, a political psychologist, talks about the psychology of colonization and how it is that colonized people then fought for their independence. And the first step of fighting for your independence, the first step of fighting for your own liberation is recognizing that you're worthy of it. And previously colonized people, the way that they were subjugated was by making them internalize that they were actually lesser than the white people. And the Black people that were good enough went to British schools, went to French schools. They were better than those other Black people. And that's how we've been subjugated for so long, because we tell ourselves we're not like those other Black people, and so it's okay for them to be treated that way because they're kind of asking for it. But that's not how it works, because we're still, in the eyes of this white supremacist dominant world, all Black.
Separate but equal is a myth. I will repeat because I know y'all don't deep things the first time. Separate but equal is a myth. There is no woke pro-Black version of segregation. And perhaps what's most alarming about this conversation, aside from the fact that Black folks are spearheading it, is the fact that it relies on this heavy revision of the true scope of the racial terror and violence that wasn't just happening institutionally, but interpersonally. This is beyond the effects of No Child Left Behind, which Bush will still be getting lashings for. This is about how quickly people were able to flatten the timeline and totality of all that has happened in the last 80 years of this country. According to my demographics, the majority of my audience are millennials or older Gen Z, meaning the majority of you were raised by boomers like me with silent gen grandparents. My mother is the fifth of 6 children. She is the second to be born in an integrated hospital. All of my oldest aunts and uncles were born in Negro hospitals, which were 3 times the distance from the farm my grandmother lived on. The same farm my family has been on since enslavement. Enslavement that is still not as far removed as y'all would like it to be. Aside from the fact that there is proof that there was enslavement occurring up until the 50s and 70s in some small towns and parishes amongst the South, my great-grandmother, who didn't pass until I was a tween, she was raised by her grandparents who were born enslaved and freed as teenagers. We are not talking about distant history. And similarly, we are even less removed from segregationist violence. There's a reason I keep telling y'all to read about Reconstruction and the post-Reconstruction period, because people have a hard time realizing that segregation was how white America was reconciling with our presence here still. We were not supposed to stay here. There were massive repatriation efforts for a reason. If we were not on the plantation, we were supposed to go back to the continent of Africa. And since that did not happen, we became an occupied people. But y'all can't deep that, because when we tell y'all to read, y'all call us elitists. And when we try to explain it to you in terms more accessible to you, you tell us it's not that deep. Or you just don't want to hear it. Black joy, joy's resistance. Why do we have to talk about the big bad stuff? It's deeply unserious and dangerous, because it leads us to this place where y'all are gleefully deep-throating white separatist policies and talking points, thinking that there is a pro-Black way to be a second-class citizen. Because that's what you were. And again, that's what y'all don't understand. You think segregation was, you can't go to this pool. You can only go to this store after 6 p.m. It meant being barred from entire institutions institutions, not having access to life-saving care, it meant federalized and legalized racial violence and terror. There are whole blocks in my grandmother's hometown in North Carolina where they were not allowed to walk on the sidewalk of, lest they be at risk of lynching or police beating them up. This is the same country that was letting white mobs in the Klan pull black men out of jail that were falsely accused of crimes against white women to lynch them for the family entertainment. But you think separate but equal exists. The same country that not only can you not seek self-determination in if you are still relying on capitalism because they control it, to be clear, but when you do make efforts towards self-determination, they destroy it. Seneca, Tulsa, Rosewood, quite literally hundreds of examples of this. This is the same country that bombed the city block in Philly in '85 because a pan-Africanist, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist group was gaining too much steam. And you think they can give you separate but equal. Half of y'all hate each other, are anti-black as hell, and think... just really interesting to me. There's a separate conversation in there for the people who did integrate spaces, because again, my mother's generation, boomers, are the children who integrated a lot of spaces, and they were subject to a lot of racial terror and violence from both adults and children because of it. And so their relationship to integration can be much more complex given the trauma. Your ass? You just out of your rabbit ass mind. My mother grew up in a borough on fire. The South Bronx was on fire. Watch Decades of Fire. It's a great documentary about it. Because the only people living there were black folk and Puerto Ricans. And the city abandoned the Bronx. They destroyed the Bronx on purpose. One, for money. Insurance policies were being cashed in on. But also because it was a lost cause. Because it was just poor black and Puerto Rican folk there. They wanted them to be annihilated. That's what y'all don't get. Separatism, race separatism, segregation are annihilationist policies. You over here getting on your knees for apartheid. It's giving Musk, but with the fist up. Like, it's wild. The real gag is segregation went nowhere. They just got more clever about it once they couldn't federalize it. Our literacy rate, maternal mortality rate, rate of preventable disease deaths, likelihood of being disabled, community least likely to live in proximity to primary care within a 4-mile radius. Studies upon studies that show that black sounding names will not be employed compared to white ones if it goes by blind resume testing. Same country that had to recently pass the Crown Act because they could legally discriminate against us for our hair, but somehow you think you've been living in real integration. Not the informed view. Quite literally asking for them to sharpen the teeth of the racial apparatus they have been using against us since chattel slavery. And to know people are, trying to pass it off as a joke. We're not serious. Y'all are just cowards. You mean it. You can't defend it. And that makes you upset. Oh, it gotta be a joke. It gotta be a key. You mean that shit. And that's a problem. It's a problem we can unpack if you admit it, you meant it for real. And if you are willing to learn. But again, a lot of y'all, telling you to read is elitist. Asking you to seek further education about these issues is ableist. Y'all have obfuscated bigotry in a way to avoid any real accountability about your position in society and how you view it. Being black isn't enough. And this is what I said before, and y'all ate me up for it. When I said a lot of y'all don't have some naturally revolutionary spirit, and that's fine, but don't go walking around touting really odd things as pro-black because you have to earn that. Y'all were upset. But then you say shit like this. The last school to desegregate in this country was in 2016 in Cleveland, Mississippi. Like, what are you asking for? Like, what are you trying to get back to? It's here. Like, I don't get it. My oldest brother and cousins were all alive during the Crown Heights race riots that took place in the 80s. Do you know why that happened? Because a Hasidic Jewish man got into a car accident, hit a black child. When the Jewish ambulance came to render him care, they refused to care for or take the black child to the Jewish hospital or to the city hospital. And by the time the city ambulance got there was nothing they can do and the child passed. Led to retaliatory racial violence, and then race riots ensued. And do you want to know what Mayor Dinkin, the first black mayor of the city, was criticized on during this period? His lenience toward the black residents of Crown Heights. They were mad he had not used the fullest extent of police presence against this community. Like, this is where you live. This is where you're potentially from. This is the legacy we're talking about. A very recent legacy. Again, the majority of you have parents born in the generation that integrated society. And to watch this be the takeaway is just like, it's bugged out to me. Also woefully naive. You think that segregation today, they're gonna give you the same power. Like, you think you're gonna be able to keep that corporate job? You think you're still that C-suite marketing exec? They destroyed every effort towards self-determination, even when they were promoting separatist policies in this country's history. But somehow you think y'all let them, you support them federalizes segregation again, and you think you're gonna be able to keep that like cushy 400K job. You think you're still being let in the door at your favorite like bougie restaurant. You think this isn't here to embolden the violence that white militias are planning toward black communities and to make it easier for them to get off scotch-free. Like, I don't even know anymore. I don't even think I want to know. We're in the bad place. I say it a lot, but shit like this is like the most pungent proof that we are in the bad place.
I need some black joy. The fact that black joy even exists as a concept in the world is miraculous to me. Asians are no good at joy. We are good at working hard and being diligent and doing our best, but not joy. Colonizers too. Rich lives, no joy. We should never have hooked our stars to theirs. But black people, especially black Americans, are the best at joy. You've turned it into an art form. I know it came from terrible hardship that you've turned into soul and then into joy. And we, Chinese people, we just turn that hardship into more hard work. But I know you can't give it to us. We have to go out and earn it for ourselves just like you did. Joy is a puzzle for every human being, and it's not free. When I ask my black friends where their joy comes from, they inevitably shake their heads and just repeat, "You can't let them take it away from you." That's what it's not. But what is black joy? Can you tell me?
Black women are the most educated group in the U.S. according to the National Center for Education Statistics. Well, Guru, it must be true because according to Essence magazine, they tell us that black women account for 68% of associate degrees, 66% of bachelor's, and 71% of masters. So I actually clicked on the link that Essence provided in their article that took me to the percentage distribution of degrees conferred to U.S. citizens and permanent residents. Black are right here, and the females say 13.6, and the females for bachelor's say 11.5, and the females for master's say 14.0. Well, let's compare that to other female groups. Caucasian females, 13.6 to 47.8. That doesn't look like the most. Bachelor's, 11.5 for black compared to 57.3 for Caucasian. That doesn't look like the most. Master's, 14 compared to 60.9. That doesn't look like the most either. Well, what about most enrolled, Guru? BWs are significantly less than Caucasian women to enroll in 4-year colleges and graduate within 6 years and go on to earn advanced degrees. Looks like Essence magazine and all the women repeating it on social media got it wrong after all.
They need to make 5 times more, and I got to have the.
Now, you won't find me talking about the black community because I don't feel like it's my place. Anything I have to say about the black community is based on observation, growing up, going to black churches, growing up in a majority black community, and then having a lot of people in my life be black women. All of that still does not give me a right to say anything over any other black person or black woman's voice. I saw this video of Tyler Perry and I wanted to add my 2 cents on it from my perspective as a white woman, looking on the outside in. And as someone who regularly talks about sexism and brainwashing and programming and feminism and blah, blah, blah. This video is not monetized, and if it is not received well, I will fucking delete it. Go watch that video with Tyler Perry, but there's a reason why I clipped the exact clip that I clipped it at. Notice the tone of voice that he goes into when he's mimicking black women. Notice how instead of addressing their very real concerns and acknowledging their standards that were put there for a fucking reason, he goes to characterizing them. He immediately turns them into a joke. And he's built his entire career off this. Black women are damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't. They are mocked by their own fucking men and told what they should and should not accept by their own men. And we won't even get into the fucking rest of the world that treats them the way that they treat them. They have to work 10 times as hard to get even a fraction of what anybody else is getting. And now they're out earning their male counterparts, and it's their problem? And they should start making compromises? It once again goes back to being their fault? You have to ask yourself why a billionaire such as Tyler Perry is addressing this issue at all. What objective does he have in addressing this issue? And how much are we expecting black women to continue to carry on their fucking backs? Because at this point, it's everything. When will black women be allowed to be women? and enjoy their lives and enjoy their accomplishments without always having the fucking fire go to their feet. Again, I don't talk about this very much because it's not my place. I totally understand that. And I can already see the comments rolling in that I'm pandering and I'm doing this and that and the other. This is something I'm passionate about. But again, I don't want to speak over anyone else's voice. I only want to add if it means anything at all. But it fucking upsets me.
African Americans made it cool to be black, but
my brother is spitting nothing but facts. African American culture is spectacular, and you have to give them respect where respect is due. Getting taken away from your motherland and having people beat you down every single time you try to express yourself and show your cultural identity, to creating the most influential culture in the world. The Harlem Renaissance, jazz, hip hop, rock and roll. They were literal movements that shook the fucking world. The effects on film, entertainment, sports, and not to mention the civil rights and human rights movements that have come from African Americans alone. They are a triumph of human will. It is insane to me that people can disrespect them and say they have no culture. They are the culture that everyone wants to emulate. You gotta respect it.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you think that the black doesn't have glory, of course you know. Everybody is seeing it. Right now, you're beginning to see, oh, we are sorry. Oh, we never knew these people were this. Oh, we never knew they were all of that. Of course, you've seen videos like that because I've shared them on this channel. You've seen, oh, can you just tell them we are sorry? We want to be allies, want to be friends, we want to be this. That is the glory they're saying. They're now beginning to recognize that black people are the chosen people of God. Of course, you can feel it. The rise, the rhythm, the roar. The same spirit that built pyramids and cities now builds movements and nations. Black glory is not coming. It's here. The return of black glory is the proof that nothing lost in the dark will stay hidden. When God turns on the lights, do you understand? Let me say that again. The return of black glory is the proof that nothing in the dark will stay hidden when God turns on the lights. Stand tall, my people. The world is watching. We are the reflection of the divine greatness. And this is our time to shine. What do you think? I want to see. What do you think about this video? Obviously. I'm getting tired because like people are no longer giving me the push I want. I'm going to back out. Yeah. What do you think? Do you think it's a myth or do you think it's real? I'd actually like to see your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to share these videos, to like them and support your sister from the motherland. Blessing on Global Just with BJ. I'll see you next time. Bye guys.